What's up, holiday goblins? I hope you are filled with health and cheer. Sadly, kid migraine is once again approaching the end of the year, sick. What can you do? And it's time for another Vlogmas. Vlog plus Christmas eats Vlogmas, where us YouTube, Twitch, vlog type people attempt to keep you entertained and educated through the long, cold months of December, all the while trying to drum up subs, likes, content, and support. Now, obviously, I haven't been doing this every day because A, I don't have a lot to say, B, it's the end of the year and I'm very, very busy, and C, I don't feel good. So I spend a lot of my time, when I'm not trying to make money, in bed, sick. So, earlier in Vlogmas, we discussed the worst games of all time. Therefore, if there's a worst game of all time, theoretically there must be a best game? Which, of course, is subjective, just like worst game is subjective, although generally most of the people agree on what the worst game is. But there is a governing board of educated geek types who every year gather to vote on what they think is the best game of the year. Actually, there's a couple, but the main one, of course, is GAMMA, the Game Manufacturers Association, and the ENNIES. Now, the ENNIES used to just be more focused on independent, but now they kind of cover the whole gamut. They prefer to vote for independents and lesser known because otherwise it would just be D&D winning every year. But D&D and the other mainline products tend to find their way into their votes. So, the best game of the year, or the best game there is, at least year by year, tends to be agreed upon on these guys. So, the 2019 winner for overall best role-playing game of the year pretty much wasn't anything new. It was just a refreshing take on something we'd already seen. A new take on the classic fantasy D&D trope. It was a different system. It was from a different company. It was from a company who had made one of my favorite games recently, but it was basically just sort of barbaric fantasy D&D using a different rule set and being very more cinematic and different takes on the classic ideas of, but yeah, basically break it down to fighter, elf, ranger, wizard going out and doing stuff. The runner-up was a new version of Delta Green, a game that's been floating around for about 8-10 years, and the other runner-up, Mothership, was a space horror game. That was one of the most original of the three. A very simple role-playing game, only 24 pages, black and white, 8 by 12, a very simple system. Mothership is sort of, the aliens, type of space horror role-playing game. You're trapped in the middle of nowhere in deep space on a spaceship that's not really working, and stuff starts going Cthulhu. So what does this say? What does this say? That most of the nominations, with exceptions of games like Motherships, were just once again retro clones or remakes. And it's the same thing we talked about last year and in 2017, that with rare exceptions, most of the games were retro clones or remakes, kind of like Hollywood. Is it that the gaming industry is afraid to challenge and make new, refreshing things? Because when a new, refreshing thing comes along, it unanimously wipes the boards on both GAMMA and ENNIE. And of course, I am speaking of the 2018 Game of the Year, Tales from the Loop. When Tales from the Loop came out last year, it won almost every award conceivable from both the ENNIES and from Game Association manufacturers. Didn't sell a lot here in Dungeons and Dragons centric California, but across the United States and over the world, it sold relatively well, especially in Europe, where it was sort of centered. And just the everything about Tales from the Loop was refreshing, was different, even though it had a lot of things people had seen before, partially because of just the timing, and it had captured some of that Stranger Things wave, but mostly it was just everything about the game was amazing and was refreshing and was different and caught the fire of the industry and of the gaming culture as a whole in 2018 that is just so different and so unique and so amazing that it just won pretty much every award, despite going up against big gaming companies like Paizo and Wizards of the Coast and Fantasy Flight and Games Workshop and Chaosium. Sadly, 2019, completely different. We see pretty much just a slog of like 3 or 4 baby independents, like Mothership, trying to get through, and then the big 4, just throwing, D&D product and Pathfinder product and Chaosium product and, World of Darkness product. And what the fuck is going on with World of Darkness anyways? Like 8 different companies hold the license. And so who wins? It's a company that I like who has made product I like, but it's not an original idea. It's a new fantasy game. I don't want to see another goddamn fantasy game. We are drowning in variations of the D&D theme. There are hundreds of D&D retro clones. There are hundreds of other games that do the same thing using different rule systems, either variations of the D20 or multiple D6s or percentiles or dice pools. But the let's go in a dungeon and kill things, or let's explore this fantasy-esque steampunk, arcane punk, elves and humans and magic and whatever world has been done. I want to see something new. That's why Tales from the Loop caught my heart and still caught my heart. Because it was new, because it was different, because everything about it was like, wow, I've never seen this before. And yet it's just like so obvious. It's just, wow. Yeah, it's sort of been done before, but not like this. This is totally unique. Why can't we see more of that? Probably because people are afraid. It's very hard to go up against, D&D. So, best game of the year was a D&D clone, a remake of a game that had already been out, Delta Green, which is an awesome game and an awesome system. I will not take that away from it. And Mothership, which was a unique original game from a small independent publisher doing space horror, a genre that, is not done enough, but with movies like, and The Expanse and Aliens and Final Destination and that the black hole and just that idea, space is scary. Space wants to kill you, as the doctor said. The minute you get out into space, space is doing everything it can to kill you. We are not meant to be in space. We need to go to space if we want to save humanity. But space is scary, and a lot of the science fiction space games make space travel like, ooh, cool, aliens and the force and spaceships and lasers, but really space should be scary. So way to go, Mothership, for winning. We're coming in the top 3. And way to go, Delta Green. But you know what? Delta Green's been around for a long time, so you're not necessarily a new game. but still, yeah. And way to go, number one, for winning, even though you're just a game that we've already seen, just done differently and maybe better. But when you're competing with Dungeons and Dragons, so that was the best game of the year. Now, of course, if there's a worst game of all time, there must be a best game of all time. But that's subjective. Most people think D&D is the best game of all time, but for every person that thinks D&D is the best game of all time, there's somebody that thinks another system is the best game of all time. I suppose the guest game of all time is what system can you run any idea you have in easily with very little prep work. So if you want to run fantasy, if you want to run on supers, if you want to run, space, if you only can take, one system with you to a desert island that requires the least amount of setup, the least amount of product, the least amount of dice, and you can just use it with maybe a, 2 or 3 pieces of paper in 10 minutes, and the system that well that you can run it and create a game using that system, and it is a consistently well-written system, then that's probably the best system out there. Of course, none of us are going to agree what that system is, but that's probably the best system out there. Anyways, congratulations to the 2019 Games of the Year, ENNIES and GAMMA winners. Sadly, you're not unanimous like the 2018 Game of the Year, Tales from the Loop. Let's see what 2020 brings us. Hopefully, more originality. Till next time, happy holidays, losers.